All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to talk about how to take all that raw, chaotic motivational energy and transform it into a highly structured, totally actionable playbook for ultimate success. We've dug really deep into some powerhouse speeches and insights on human potential, mental toughness, and just the sheer will to survive adversity. So instead of just hyping you up, we're stepping in as analysts today. We're going to break down exactly what separates the people who absolutely conquer their dreams from the ones who just kind of fade into the background. Get ready because we are mapping out the exact mental frameworks you need to build a system of literally unbreakable resilience.
So let's dive right into this. How many times have you been in the thick of a crisis, absolutely convinced you had reached your breaking point? The source material asks this directly, and it really shifts your perspective. I mean, we've all been there, right? But what the text reveals is fascinating. Surviving those moments isn't about luck at all. It's about a systematic approach to overcoming adversity. In this explainer, we are going to trace the anatomy of that survival, step by step, building a roadmap together for not just getting through the storm, but actually using it to fuel your ultimate rise.
Phase 1. The Awakening. Defining your ultimate vision.
Every great journey starts with a shock to the system, something to establish a real baseline for your life. Because before you can build mental toughness, you have to know exactly what you are fighting for. Our source material draws a hard line in the sand here between two types of people. On one side, you've got those who merely accept their lives. They basically operate on accident, just letting external circumstances dictate their path. But on the other side, you have those who lead their lives with fierce intentionality. And I found this fascinating. Nobody ever goes uphill by accident. Think about it. You have never read a biography about someone's accidental achievements. Greatness requires you to be hyper-intentional with your time, your effort, and your focus.
But to be that intentional, you need a very specific kind of dream. The text tells us that your goals must be massively disproportionate to your problems. Like, you need a dream so incredibly big that it literally overwhelms your underlying fears. This isn't just some nice-to-have, maybe someday goal. It's a vision that shakes you awake in the middle of the night. It keeps you up when you're exhausted, and it forces you to show up and do things you wouldn't normally have the courage to do. That massive scale of ambition, that acts as your primary shield against the urge to quit.
Which brings us to Phase 2, the descent, braving the inevitable storm.
Once you set that massive goal, the playbook warns us that life will inevitably test your resolve, throwing you into a phase of absolute chaos. But here's the thing, you cannot be great if you cannot operate in chaos. Chaos isn't a sign to stop, it's a prerequisite. There's that famous concept. If you're going through hell, keep going. And honestly, if you think about it practically, it makes perfect sense. I mean, if you're facing constant rejections, you're totally exhausted, and the odds are completely stacked against you, you are essentially in hell. So, the absolute worst thing you can do is stop walking. If you're already in pain, stopping in the middle of hell makes absolutely zero sense. You just have to keep running, even when you have no clue where the exit is, because the next level of your life is waiting right on the other side of that fire.
This means we need to completely redefine what failure means. Failure is absolutely not an endpoint. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a vital facilitator of change. The material explains that when you survive a massive setback, you emerge with a profound gift. You gain the visceral knowledge that you can survive. You become deeply secure in your own strength, and you realize that your true self, and frankly, the actual strength of your relationships, can only truly be known once they've been tested by intense adversity.
The source boils this down to a surprisingly harsh binary choice. It made me realize that doing what is easy, choosing to complain about your circumstances or just surrender and become bitter, will ultimately make your life incredibly hard. Conversely, if you choose to do what is hard, pushing mentally through situations that just absolutely suck, brushing yourself off after a devastating loss, you build true mental resiliency. On the other side of that temporary pain, you literally meet a new, stronger version of yourself.
To really understand this journey, you have to look at the timeline of greatness, because it takes immense time and patience. You have to be prepared to spend a full month just building your foundation, and then potentially a whole year getting 1,000 no's just to finally secure one single yes by year 3. So what is it going to take for you to keep going when literally everyone else is quitting because of rejection, when your friends and family are calling you foolish? Well, it takes this steady, unrelenting patience to understand that building greatness, a lasting brand, or a meaningful life is a 5+ year marathon of pure mental endurance.
All right, Section 3. The Pivot. Discipline over empty excuses.
So the crucial point is, to survive a timeline that long, motivation alone simply won't be enough. The source outlines a fascinating shift from relying on fleeting inspiration to anchoring yourself entirely to discipline. And it starts with an exercise called the dark room. Look, we live in a world absolutely obsessed with noise, where people are terrified of being alone with their own thoughts. The strategy here is to radically unplug. Shut off the technology, step into a dark, quiet room, and spend real, unfiltered time with yourself. You have to silence the outside world long enough to actually hear your own inner voice, so you can figure out exactly what your true purpose is.
Once you uncover that purpose in the quiet, you need a reliable vehicle to get you there. Enter discipline. The text defines discipline brilliantly. It is doing what you absolutely hate to do, but doing it like you love it. Discipline is your absolute best friend. It doesn't care about your mood. It doesn't care about the weather. It's the unfeeling mechanism that forces you to wake up and grind even when every single fiber of your being wants to hit snooze. It puts you on the direct, non-negotiable path to health, strength, and success, even when you're terrified.
And a disciplined mind operates with singular focus. The source reveals why having a plan B is actually incredibly dangerous. Think about it. Every single thought, every ounce of energy you put into a backup plan is energy directly stolen from plan A. When you give yourself a safety net, you secretly negotiate with your ambition. To truly succeed, you must commit to your primary vision so fiercely that failure just isn't an alternative. It's just a hurdle you have to jump over on the way to plan A.
So how do you actually execute Plan A? The playbook suggests relying on the massive power of the number 1. It all comes down to micro habits. Changing your life is usually about doing just one more. One extra decision, one extra meeting, one extra phone call, one extra rep in the gym when your muscles are literally screaming. When you start stacking up those one mores, day after day, you create the ultimate separator between living an average life and building a legendary one.
And that brings us to our final phase, Section 4, the return, reinventing your true self.
You've awakened to your dream, you've braved the chaotic descent, and you've embraced relentless discipline. Now, as you emerge from the storm to invent and continually reinvent your true self, the source anchors this phase with an epic Dylan Thomas poem. It's a fierce battle cry against settling. So many people hit a hurdle, decide they can't do it, and just quietly let their potential fade away. They accept mediocrity. This quote demands that you do the exact opposite. You must rage against average. You must fiercely resist the urge to accept a lesser version of your life.
The playbook gives us a very concrete blueprint for this reinvention. It starts with simply deciding exactly who you are going to be, because the universe tends to get out of the way of a made-up mind. From there, it's about physically showing up. 50% of winning is literally just being in the room. Then you have to embrace being fiercely self-taught, use your critics and your haters as raw fuel to keep grinding, and finally, risk being seen in all your glory. You have to stop hiding in the shadows just out of a fear of failing publicly. As you step into that light, remember that nobody is flawless. The goal isn't to be a perfect machine. Real perfection, as the text notes, is found in perfecting your imperfections. It's about owning your flaws, failing forward, learning from those deeply painful mistakes, and adapting your strategy. You recreate yourself not by hiding your cracks, but by filling them with gold, making the repaired version even stronger and way more unique than the original ever was.
When it comes to personal accountability, the ultimate rule is surprisingly skewed. The data suggests life's outcomes are only 10% what actually happens to you. The overwhelming 90% is what you do about it. Trauma, setbacks, and devastation will inevitably come. That's the 10%. But you cannot allow those events to become permanent barricades. Your reaction, your agility, and your mental toughness, that makes up the 90% that entirely dictates your ultimate success.
And that leads us to this incredibly powerful truth, which is perhaps the core thesis of this entire playbook. We don't get our goals, we get our standards. It's so easy to dream about what you want, but you will only ever achieve the life that aligns with what you tolerate day in and day out. If you want to go uphill, your daily standards have to match that steep incline. You must demand relentless effort from yourself, long before the rewards ever actually show up.
So we end on this final, provocative question. Will you show up for the fight? You now have the playbook. You know that motivation has to give way to discipline, that failure is just data, and that true greatness requires you to run straight through the chaos. The only thing left is to step out of the shadows, face your fears head-on, and actually execute your vision. Thank you so much for exploring this explainer with me. Now go get after it.